Well, Chris, I think we should take a step back and say how we got here, which is that the Russians, as the U.S. senior members of the U.S. government confirmed, have been hacking into Democratic accounts, and now they've hacked into my account. They put out documents that are purported to be from my account. But I think if you look at what she said in this campaign, to get to your question, I would just add, this should be of concern to everyone that the Russians are trying to influence our election.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to discuss the latest Q posts, which are incredible. More confirmations that President Trump is directly involved, and we're going to look at John Podesta's history and involvement in New Zealand prior to the tragedy that struck. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to Just Informed Talk. I always start by saying thank you to everybody who's hit that subscribe button. If you haven't, come here to the landing page, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications, and make sure you go hit the like button if you guys like what you see here on the channel. Today we're going to pick up right where we left off, and there is a lot to cover, so we're just going to kind of dive right into it, and you guys are going to want to stick around. This episode's incredible. You have President Trump basically tweeting out Q. So, and then we have other stuff to look at with John Podesta and his connection, or the fact that he was in New Zealand prior to all of this happening, and a lot more. So, this is where we're going to pick up Q Post 3096. That's where we left off, and we're going to pick up here at Q Post 3097. And as always, I always encourage you guys, if you guys want to get caught up on the Q stuff, to come back here, watch these last few videos, and also watch this video if you don't know what QAnon, the Great Awakening is. It'll give you a good idea of everything that is going on here, so I always encourage everyone to check that out. So, today, March 17th, or yesterday, I guess, March 17th, 2019, this is what happens. First of all, Q is pointing to this post from an Anon who shows us this. And what is this? This is a retweet from President Donald Trump, where the person's profile picture on Twitter literally is a Q with a Make America Great Again hat on. Of course, this is the actual tweet itself. We can scroll down here on President Trump's actual Twitter page, and it is still there. If you guys want to see it. It says, "We have to fight back. They have not let up on President Trump nor his supporters since they lost. They are losers. We are winners. President Trump calls on Fox News to bring back Judge Jeanine Pirro." So this is incredible, first of all. President Trump tweeting that out. But there is even more we're going to get to later in the episode, where Q is basically taunting at Jack, and apparently it looks like might be changing the comment sections, but we'll have to see. So getting back over here to the board, then an Anon basically takes the screenshot and puts it up and says, "Look what POTUS retweeted and what's in the upper left corner." And Q replies, "Retweet many for plausible deniability. March 17 message to Q." So, obviously, guys, this is pretty self-explanatory. Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. Yesterday was March 17th. This tweet was put out as a wink and a nod to everyone out there following this, that it's very real and the content we're covering is very serious. And the next one is basically an Anon pointing to that, saying Anons, pointing back to this one right here, saying Anons, and Q just replies, "We are with you, Q." Now the next one here is pretty disturbing, and it has to do with John Podesta, the New Zealand massacre that just occurred, and what kind of things can be connected there. Now, in order to understand this, first we'll look at this graphic. So it explains strange connection. And what exactly does that have to do with? Well, just before this all took place, we had John Podesta visiting New Zealand and saying in a television interview that they were a juicy target for a major hack. And of course, you can read through this article and see what it says for yourself. I'll leave a link in the description. But it basically just says that that was what he uttered while on television in New Zealand. Here's a quote. He says, "Vladimir Putin must be sitting in the Kremlin saying, 'This is the best return on investment I ever got. I've got a pliant president of the United States.'" Now, the fact that you have political members of the political machine for the Clintons going to foreign countries and basically calling or making the statement that President Putin is some sort of complicit Russian agent is on its face value absurd and disgusting. But to think about the fact that they're going over there and making these other kind of vague insinuations about possible attacks, and then literally, a few days after he's there and saying that they're a major target, you have this tragedy, truly tragic. Now, a lot of anons on the board were very quick to pick up on a few things. First of all, it's saying, here's the article where it talks about John Podesta was in New Zealand 5 days ago and warned of a major cyber attack. And it's saying now, in light of all the recent events that happened at this tragedy, that New Zealand is planning on changing their gun laws. Now, this is eerily similar to what happened in Australia, where you had an awful mass shooting, which was the Port Arthur massacre. Now, this occurred back in 1996, where 35 people lost their lives and 23 were wounded in a eerily similar set of senseless violence. You actually have this massacre being the catalyst that spurred Australia as a country to make owning firearms illegal across the board, except with very special permits and very special licenses. So this in and of itself is really a disturbing set of events that's taking place here. And what Q's pointing us to is even more disturbing when you think of it in context of what's happening. But then somehow we get pointed back to John Podesta. And that is where this all takes a really dark turn into the occult. So this is the gun that was used by the attacker, and it just has a bunch of crazy stuff written on it, just obviously psychotic ramblings, where they mention all these other people's names. And but the one thing he wants us to look at is this fish in the 14, and that goes back to Podesta, the fish in the 14, and it talks about this fish, the fish in the Osiris myth. Now, this is actually a very disturbing story about Osiris. Okay, so this is a part of Egyptian mythology, and it's saying, the story basically goes like this. Osiris was murdered and cut up into 14 pieces by his brother Set and scattered throughout the land of Egypt. Osiris's wife, Isis, set out to find all of the pieces of his body to resurrect him. She found all but the 14th piece, his phallus, which is his nether region, and it says which was eaten by a fish, now cursed because of this, in the river Nile. Isis made a phallus out of gold and temporarily resurrected Osiris so she could conceive a child. Their offspring is the god Horus, and it says here 14 plus the fish equals the male phallus, symbolizing power, sex magic, and resurrection. So this is the kind of sick occult stuff that we're dealing with here. And if this person was crazy enough to write that on his, weapon there, that is in and of itself just disgusting and disturbing. And we're still putting this together. But Q basically says, what does a dog do when she has a bone? Did he have a therapist? Who paid for his travel to the Middle East? So, and Q. So these ones are very good questions. First of all, let's just take them one at a time. The simple answer for the first one is dig. What does a dog do when she has a bone? They dig. And that's an insinuation to the Anons and you guys out there to take this information and dig further and see if you can find these connections. Therapist. Now, here's another one we've had as a recurring theme when Q tells us about these crazy situations, right? Where we have deranged people who are going out and committing these awful, horrific crimes. Now, Q has mentioned this before a few times. We've had a few people who have committed these acts of senseless mass violence, and Q pointed us to a few things when this would happen. Well, here's the first one. Now, this was in response to one of the tragedy that happened in a newsroom there in Maryland, where 5 people lost their lives. But it's saying law enforcement should interview the therapist. Each shooter has one, coincidentally. Targets, relocation within 30 days of each shooting, new name. FBI doesn't know this. Spooks are hard to find. Dream to reality. Q. So this one right here is quite disturbing. But it's talking about the therapist, and it's talking about people relocating. Now, if you guys remember, this person who is involved, I'm not going to say their name because I don't care to put their name out there. That's what they want. I'd rather just talk about the issue at hand that we've been pointed to on this topic, and then move on. But it basically says here that they were relocating, and we all know that the person who was involved with that was relocated basically from, or living in, or was from Australia and then moved to New Zealand, or was traveling back and forth, right? So that's one. Then the next one was here on June 28th, where Q is saying, the key equals therapists, weak minds, use of symbolism to push strength and belonging to something powerful, controlled, duty, find the link, common denominator, error made, name can be found due to filing, fake, background, office, other patients, relocation imminent, conspiracy risk, end for now, Haspel must find and terminate classified program, she knows, Q. I mean, that's disturbing, but what's being suggested here is that there was a link to somebody, one of the clowns. You guys know who they are, because that's Gina Haspel's role, is the head director of the clowns in America. And this is a disturbing thought. And Q bringing this back up again in this situation is going to really make a lot of people think. Now, doing some research, you kind of look through these and you can see they have these different articles where it talks. Here's an interesting one where we got this, how it's done, right? How would they do this if, in fact, they were trying to manipulate people's minds and convince them that committing these acts, these horrible acts, horrific acts, are, I don't know, somehow justified, but basically programming people. It says, first it gives you this CIA mind control article about drug hypnosis, right? The truth about the CIA's illegal MK Ultra control experiments, or mind control experiments using drugs, hypnosis, and electronic devices revealed in sensational new documents officials hid for decades. So that's the one place that Q asked us to start. And it's saying program development, or developed ongoing under offshore, not domestic tangent agency. So a rogue agency is running a non-domestic program. So it's being insinuated. Covert funding. Well, we all know that there's covert money everywhere. Animals and humans. And humans, 1998. Average, 71% average success rate. Targeted people with mental criteria designated as, so there's definitely a diagnosis you can have where they go after people with weaker minds, it would seem. Mental institutions and therapists are program specialists. Oh, okay. Cocktail regimen, 4 times daily brain intercept administered by presumably a doctor or somebody. And then it gives this article, which takes us to an article here that talks about converting brain signals into action. So it just goes to show you what kind of understanding that publicly they have of the brain, how it works, and how they can use that understanding to manipulate the actions of from the brain to the world as an external output. But then if they have that kind of understanding, what kind of input can be done? And I was talking to this with a friend about this the other day, and we were talking about kind of like 5G and how the radio waves could be used to manipulate people. But moreover, think about this. You're carrying around a device, right? What's to say that they couldn't just co-opt the device and take people who are mentally weak or have mental issues, obviously, and show them and give them special messages, convince them that they're talking to the devil or talking to God or talking to, Houdini's ghost or something. And they could literally send that information. And when the person goes to show someone like, hey, look, I'm not crazy, they could just take it off. And it would be like subtle manipulation like that. For instance, there was a Lyft driver who I believe was convinced that his app was telling him to commit acts of violence. And that would be the stimulus, the stimulus to the brain to get you to do things you otherwise wouldn't do. But that would be among other, many other things. And they've basically mapped the brain out. And I think that covertly they've probably even gone even further than what they've done publicly. So it would not be a far stretch to say that this all is talking about something very important. And it says here, wounded in action military personnel targets of the program, PTSD plus, clandestine black ops, zero affiliation, non-stick, something out of a movie, fiction, the hole is deep, Q. Yeah. And then we come up here to this one. So that's kind of what it was talking about with therapists. Now, the next one here where it says who paid for his travel to the Middle East. Well, there is a Washington Post article out here that kind of outlines this. This article doesn't tell us much about his traveling to the Middle East, but apparently this person who has been the alleged gunman here has decided to represent himself. But one interesting thing I gleaned off of this article, it says that this person was born and raised in Australia, but I've been traveling for the past 9 years or so, including Turkey and Pakistan. I mean, so what was he doing in Turkey and Pakistan, and what happened there? And also, as Q said, who financed those trips? I believe these are questions that we would all probably like to know the answer to. So there's going to be a lot more digging going into this, and that's pretty much as far as we can take it for now. But look, remember, what does a dog do when he or she has a bone? You dig. Dig it? Okay, so the next one here is this tweet, right? And this is a thread where it says, it kind of goes into detail about everything that we just covered. So let's talk through this thread. So it says, 1, Podesta is touring Australia and New Zealand. John Podesta has just completed an Australian speaking tour on March 7th, 2019, which has gotten very little media coverage. And he gives a link to this Eventbrite event plan for the Path to Progress, where John Podesta would be traveling there. Now the next one here, it says, 2, he is now offering huge support for the current New Zealand Prime Minister while also warning of likely future cyber attacks. He called NZ a big juicy target, and that's interesting language. So this is an article that is showing they're over there supporting this Prime Minister. Now, why would they be supporting this Prime Minister? Remember, who went to New Zealand shortly after a lot was coming out here in the United States, and Q had alleged that they had gone to access Five Eyes classified information. Well, the allegation was basically made by Q that it was Hillary in her trip to New Zealand where she met with the Prime Minister. Now, what was being suggested there was that she had retained her security clearance in the Five Eyes, so she was able to go and actually look at intelligence information that she otherwise would not have been permitted access to here in this country. And she went over there to do some intelligence collecting of her own. And Jacinda Ardern was the one who was giving her the access. Obviously, if you look at the Five Eyes, Jacinda Ardern is the weakest of them all, and with the smallest country and probably the least amount of skin in the game, really. So that's something to think about. And it's really interesting to note that in relation to this Twitter feed that we're going to read through here. It says, 3, being so far away from the U.S., Skippy mustered up the courage to rip apart Trump's reputation to his New Zealand audience. Very special, Skippy. This is a good example of a treasonous spirit. Darkness will be exposed by its disregard for authority and due process. And here's a snapshot of an article where it says, Podesta also gave his views on the United States President Donald Trump, saying he is completely unfit and unqualified to be President of the United States. He said there is a huge amount of division within politics, and Trump was an example of that. It says, quote, you see it with the building of the wall. It's largely a politics of fear and a politics of racism. And add to that, his misogyny, and it's a toxic mix. Yeah, okay. Anyway, the number 4 says he references Five Eyes in the articles above, and above is also extremely interesting given the fact hashtag fight or given the pending FISA declassification. He rounded out the tour, reminding us of the danger of social media being being fake news. Yeah, of course you would have to say that, right, to cover your tracks. It says 5, he also gave the world another reminder about the total nonsense of the common ping pong story. You can't make this up. This is actually a dialogue that he gave. It says, quote, what's new is this weaponization, the use of social media to spread discord, lies, dissatisfaction. That I think what you're that's I think what you've got to look out for. I'm sorry, this is like in his plain speak, so it's kind of hard to read his weird stuttering weirdo clamored verbiage he uses. But it says Mr. Podesta played a starring role in one of the greatest conspiracy theories of the election. His hacked emails included exchange about Washington D.C. pizza joint called Comet Ping Pong. Quote, the rumors were that HC and I were running a child porn ring, which had no basis in anything, but a guy showed up with a gun and ended up shooting a pizza parlor. Now, that's totally contextually just wrong. First of all, what's being pointed to here, this insinuation that it's all just about running something out of a pizza joint, which is just insanity. I don't think anybody ever claimed that, and the people who were basically just trying to do an investigation and trying to find answers, but it's disturbing. And yeah, that's what it wants us to look at. Now, it's saying again, just kind of reiterating, days after calling New Zealand a big juicy target, we have a terror attack. It could all be nothing, but sometimes something smells really, really off here, of course. And it says Q also got involved, warning of large attacks in coming days. And Anon asked about this New Zealand attack, and Q responds with a chilling response. It was not big enough to take over the headlines, and that is disturbing to consider. And then he references this Sean King tweet and saying, and it starts where it says, the New Zealand mosque shooter says in his manifesto that he admires Donald Trump because Trump is a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose. Another completely contextually misquoted or contextually wrong quote, because first of all, the guy identifies as loving China more than he loves any other country in the world. That's how he identifies himself. And then also that same quote, the part they cut off there was the part where the guy said he would never, ever follow President Trump ideologically. So, I mean, I don't even understand, Sean. Why would you put that up there unless you're just trying to create fake news? But that's how they work. Now, the next one here is this "We Must Fight" video. And this is Ronald Reagan's speech, and it's epic. You guys should watch it. There's cool stuff. I'm going to throw a link to it. We've seen it here on the board so much. It's inspirational, and I'm going to put a link to it. I want you guys to go watch it. Now, again, Q responding to this, or putting this tweet that President Trump retweeted with the Q faceplate here, saying, quote, "We have to fight back." And then, of course, it points to this President Trump status on Twitter, where it's saying, "To the people that got you there, keep fighting for Tucker and fight hard for Judge Jeanine. Your competitors are jealous. They all want what you've got. Number one, don't hand it to them on a silver platter. They can't beat you. You can only beat yourselves." So what I think we're looking at here is the Q commenter, QAnon 76 here on Twitter, one of the bigger accounts, 150,000 followers doing this, usually gets knocked down by Ed Krasenstein, who's always number one on President Trump's Twitter comment board, which is disgusting because all they do is make horrible statements about our president and basically spread their lies. But anyway, it says down here, "You are defending racism in America. You are defending sexism in America. You are defending Islamophobia in America when you defend Judge Jeanine and Tucker Carlson." That is patently false. But they are allowed to have that opinion. But look who's number two now. Ed, you've been dethroned from your little @Jack appointed Twitter throne, where you had the first comment so you can make a nastier remark about the president every time he tweeted. Which is basically what I've noticed over the last. I don't think if you could point me to, if anyone out there, in the sake of fairness, if anyone out there can point me to one Ed or Brian Krasenstein tweet that speaks positively about the president, I'll gladly look at changing my views. But until that happens, I'm going to go ahead and just go off of what I've seen, which is just a whole lot of nonsense and lies and mistruths. And of course, Q says keep fighting. Now, the next one is this that tells us what a patriot is and what a traitor is. You guys have heard this before, I know, but I'll just read them again. It's saying a patriot's a person who loves, supports, and defends his or her country and its interests with devotion. A person who regards himself or herself as a defender, especially of individual rights, against presumed interference by the federal government. A traitor is a person who betrays another, a cause, or any trust. A person who commits treason by betraying his or her country. The next one here is this dichotomy picture of good versus evil, and I still haven't quite figured out exactly what this is, but if you guys do look, there is an actual full picture of it, and I'll pull that up right here, and this is what it was clipped out of. It's this picture looking like it's heaven and hell, actually. So you have this side being heaven and this side being hell, and this was the post that Q gave us. And interesting. And of course, the next one here is the flag. It says 1775. And finally, or not finally, but the next one here, which is really what matters, is so QAnon 76 posts this comment to President Trump's latest tweet, "Make America Great Again." Right? So if we go back here and we go to the top, you can see it's there. It's the first post on on President Trump's Twitter. The first comment, I should say. And Q, so for my reading of the situation, because I didn't see this in real time, but I was looking at it as it was coming up, and I missed a little bit of what was happening. But the PNG is called "Hello Jack." And then Q posts the tweet and says, "@Jack, who has the real control? Can you remove the top comments?" And what is obviously meant here, in my opinion, has to do directly with the fact that the top comment was changed on this last tweet from President Trump. What was it? Well, according to other people over on Twitter who have been following this and kind of, doing some of the research here, an Anon posted here that you can see in this screenshot clearly the first, and I'm sorry if it's a little hard to make out, but President Trump posted this comment, and then this person, Victor the Great, was at the top. And then right after that, of course, it was replaced with QAnon. And the insinuation, I think, being made is basically that although Twitter and the folks over there may be trying to push the Krasenstein brothers and other people who dislike the president to the top of his comment page in an attempt to basically to suppress conservatives and people who support the president, that basically they don't have the real control. Okay? And of course it's going on to say, "Thanks for playing @Jack. Showing your hand was the intended target." And it says, "The strike will be fast. Shall we play a game, Q?" And of course Q corrects himself here in the next one, saying strike was meant to be strike, not shrike. So showing his hand, I mean, I guess this is what it is. Now, who's in control, Jack? That's really the question. Shall we play a game? That's a line we've been hearing a lot here lately, but that's pretty much going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you guys coming and checking out the channel. Let me know what you think down in the comments about all of this stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts, theories, and insights. A few ways you can help out the channel. If you want to stick around for 1 second, we have some cool stuff we do at the end of at the end of each show. First of all, if you want to help out the channel, the best way to do it is come here, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the thumbs up button at the bottom of this video if you guys like what you just saw here. Also, like I said, don't forget to leave your thoughts, theories, and insights in the comments, and watch these videos and share them on your social media. A few other ways you can help out the channel. Come over here and find me on Patreon, patreon.com. There'll be a link in the description. It's a crowdfunding website where you can set up a monthly donation to help create content on this channel. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate your help. And you guys have to know, without your support here on Patreon, I couldn't do this. So thank you truly for that support. Also, I have a GoFundMe. If you want to make a one-time donation, that helps out the channel. That helps the channel immensely as well. So thank you so much for that. Also, don't forget to come over here and check out justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk, where you get all the links to the Q stuff, different news websites, different breaking news feeds, and you'll get all the videos from the YouTube channel here. And don't forget to come find me over here on Twitter at JustInformYou. And that's a cool place to come find me as well, where we can all talk to the president together and tell at Jack to stop censoring us. That would be a great place to go for that. So before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater. It's where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And for today's segment, I'm going to read a little piece of scripture here to you out of the book of Psalm, and it's Psalm 34, verses 19 through 22, and then we'll talk about it. It says, "Many adversities come to the one who is righteous, but the Lord delivers him from them all. He protects all his bones. Not one of them is broken. Evil brings death to the sinner, and those who hate the righteous will be punished. The Lord redeems the life of his servants, and all who take refuge in him will not be punished." And that's as simple as it is, guys. When we go into the world and we live a righteous life, and we commit acts that are righteous, and we embrace humility before God, and we embrace the incredible gift that is our eternal salvation that was bought and paid for with the sacrifice made by Jesus on the cross for our sins, we're going to be confronting many adversities. But that's what faith is. Faith in God is what will deliver you through those adversities. And I know they may seem impossible, and I know they may seem insurmountable, and I know that at times it may seem like the best path is to give up, but you can't give up. You have to hold on, you have to fight, you have to believe, you have to work hard, even when it feels like it's impossible. Because that's faith in God. Faith is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And that truly is what we're all called to do. And through that adversity, we'll be saved. God says right here that if we take refuge in him, we will not be punished. And that's what we have to do. We have to put our full faith in our Lord and Savior, Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit, and we have to live our lives every day with that in mind, and that being our driving motivations. That's going to wrap it up. Remember, guys, great ways to help out the channel. If you haven't already, now's a great time to do it. Come here, click the big red subscribe button, and there's a thumbs up. It's the like button. Click that. They both help the channel out big time. That's going to be it for me. This has been Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.